What's up with it, guys? Okay, this is some exciting stuff that just came out less than 24 hours ago, and I wanted to go ahead and make a video kind of going through it and explaining some of my hopes or anticipations based on these changes coming into patch 8.1, things maybe to start planning on or getting ready for if you are a marksman hunter main, or at least planning on playing the spec somewhat regularly, whether it be PvE or PvP. I wanted to go through these posts. Now, this just got posted up here. Now, blue posts, which is what this is, for those of you that don't know, are official responses, whether it be via forums or whatever, from Blizzard themselves. So this is official information from the creators of the game. This is not like opinion-based or whatever. These are changes they are going to be implementing if they post it. Now, what can change is, if you scroll down here, is this data mined information. That is still susceptible to being tweaked because stuff might be a little bit disproportionate as far as the weights and percentages, things like that. So main thing I want to talk about, which Ravenclaw, for those of you that follow him, is also a guy who posts hunter content on YouTube, went through this, but there are some things that he didn't mention, and he did not go through any of this data mined information, which I think is so important because there's some really exciting changes in that are not in this blue post. Now, let's go through this really quick. Bursting shot basically is getting an increase to its knockback range. I don't know if that means the range in which it will actually hit a target. I don't know if that means the range you get knocked back when you get hit. Not super clear on that because it really could be either. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. Big point here is it can no longer be dodged. So against rogues that pop evasion, things like that, this is going to be really crucial and really, really helpful for us and our PL, because rogues are probably our hardest counter, at least in my opinion, when it comes to PvP. The other thing is the snare is now boosted up from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. So this is not a snare like a root. This is a snare, so it's a slow based off of Blizzard terms. That's how it's considered. So it's just increasing the duration of this slow. Down here, the steady shot will increase the duration of concussive shot if it is already on the target by 3 seconds. This doesn't have to be your concussive shot. If another hunter concussive shots the target and you cast steady shot, it will increase the duration of that slow. My guess, and it doesn't say this, but it will be capped at 6 seconds, maybe up to 9, or you might get some kind of 30% buff the same way like dots and hots do. So that's not super clear, but it's not going to expend up to like a 20-second slow or anything like that. But this is also very good because it basically allows us to save that global cooldown rather than having to stop our steady shots or arcane shots or whatever we're doing for damage and have to use an additional global for our slow. It lets us kind of incorporate that slow into our DPS rotation in PvP situations. As long as we get it up on the target initially, we basically have 6 seconds to refresh that with a steady shot, or increase that buff duration. Really good. I think it's going to be a really big quality of life change for our general kiting and ability to just kite and peel for ourselves. Now, this is super exciting to me. There's a lot of, pause on reading this real quick. There's a lot of changes and adjustments that they're making to rapid fire, which I actually really, really like, because currently, at least in my opinion and in my experience so far, rapid fire is not as strong as running a steady shot build, because you're basically relying on this cooldown that can very easily be interrupted via a stun, incapacitate, fear, things like that. So with that being said, the fact that they're making all these changes to rapid fire, I think, is going to make it much more viable in these PvP situations, and I'll kind of explain some more of why I think that. Now, rapid fire, basically what they're doing is, if you're familiar with like arcane mages, for example, if you run around a pillar after an arcane mage has casted arcane missiles, all of those missiles will still fire and still hit you, even if you're LOS, as long as you are not line of sight for them to get the initial cast of that channel off, right? Rapid fire currently, if someone line of sights you in the middle of the cast, rapid fire stops doing damage, which is a huge, huge, huge issue with it as far as PvP and viability, because it's really easy to line of sight a hunter. I mean, in general, right? All they have to do is have one kind of mobility to get behind a rock or a wall or a pillar or whatever, and you lose damage. So running stuff like double tap rapid fire, all that damage could be negated if someone just dips behind a pillar, right? So that was a big issue. So that's going to bring a lot more viability to specs like that, because that cannot happen. The other thing that they're saying is that disengage can be cast during your rapid fire and will not break channeling. That's also huge, because it's going to allow us, for example, in situations like if a rogue is on us, we can have some amount of distance. Say we do bursting shot, have some distance, start casting rapid fire. If they start closing that gap and you're worried about getting a stun or something like that, you can disengage mid-cast to create some more distance and not lose that damage output. So again, it's going to be very helpful for our biggest counters. Aim shot, This is just a blurb basically saying that they feel like aim shot's weak by comparison to how it should feel. I don't disagree. So there's 2 changes they're making to really help tailor to that. Careful Aim currently has a 50% chance to do 100% bonus damage on targets above 80% or below 20% health. They're swapping those 2 percentages that I mentioned at the beginning of that tooltip. Careful Aim will now have a 100% chance of doing 50% bonus damage above 80% or below 20% health. So what this is going to allow for is a little more consistency in our damage, rather than having this kind of, roll of the dice, maybe we'll get this big crit kind of thing. We're going to constantly just have a harder hitting opener, and we're going to constantly have a better potential to execute when targets are low. So this is a really, really good change in my opinion. I much prefer things like this where it's 100% chance to happen in these situations than have like a bigger reward, but it's like maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Especially in arenas and stuff like that, it makes it really hard to constantly anticipate and know what your damage output can be when you have these 50-50 shots of things happening or not. It's much better in my opinion to have the damage reduced by half and have it be 100% uptime. Allows for a lot more consistency in your gameplay rotation and how you're able to react in those situations and know, okay, this is going to do around 30% of their health virtually every time, or whatever it may be, that you just know roughly what your damage output is going to be in all these situations. Makes it a lot easier to make those judgment calls of, is it even worth getting an aim shot off now? Yes, no. Actually, I should just spam arcane shots. Actually, I should rapid fire. Basically making all of those spur of the moment decisions. Having 100% chance for stuff to proc is much more valuable in PvP situations. True Shot, they are changing it. Currently, my biggest peeve with True Shot is that a huge part of the value in it is that you get a stack of aim shot, which means if you use it in your opener, you are negating a big chunk of that value, right? Because you're going to already be sitting at 2 stacks, assuming you're out of combat or stealth or whatever, so you lose that extra stack. Why Marksman has this kind of a burst cooldown beats me, because no other classes that I can think of have anything like this, right? Everyone has like increases your crit, increases your haste, increases your damage, increases your crit chance, whatever. All these different like bursts, they're just really straightforward. It's like, okay, set it up, pop your burst, go. Hunters, really, to optimize it, you should already have used an aim shot, then pop your burst. Very unintuitive and does not feel good, in my opinion, as far as the playstyle. So they're removing the extra stack you get off of aim shot. They are keeping the haste buff, but they are doubling it, and it's only applicable to aim shot. So what this means is that you're not going to have that 30% haste buff across the board, at least initially how this tooltip is reading. You will have a 60% haste buff on aim shot itself, and then you will also have an increased, let me see, I believe it's 60%. Sorry, 50% haste buff on aim shot itself, and rapid fire and aim shots cooldowns will regenerate 60% faster. That's where the 60% comes in. So what they're doing is, rather than it giving you a stack of aim shot, if you're going with a build that's really prioritizing rapid fire, True Shot is also going to give you value in that as well. It is not going to increase the speed or reduce the cast time, at least currently in this tooltip, of things like rapid fire, your general haste, your steady shots, arcane shots. It's only going to increase the cast or reduce the cast time of aim shots, but it will allow you to regenerate your rapid fires and your aim shot stacks quicker during the duration. They're also changing it from a 3-minute cooldown to a 2-minute cooldown, which you can see down here. I will post this link in the description below for you guys to take a look if you want to read through some of this more yourselves, because there's a lot of information in here, and I think it's all really interesting stuff. Aim shot, nothing too exciting here. It says this passive buff, the 50% damage against targets you've not damaged yet, is being removed. I found that very, what would it be, lackluster in the general scheme of playing Marksman, so that does not bug me in the slightest. All these other changes and buffs are much more valuable. Arcane Shot's damage is getting buffed right out of the gate. Now, we'll read a little bit further down here in Precise Shots why it's not like an overall huge buff, but I think it is going to be a good quality of life change, and you guys are probably going to hear me say this a bunch kind of moving forward, is I think the Arcane Flurry trait is going to be much stronger than it is now, and I would argue that there's going to be situations or potentially even optimal builds where you stack 3 of that Azurite trait because of this change right here, especially in PvP. So Arcane Shot is the damage is being increased. Bursting Shot we already talked about. The snare is being increased, the duration of the snare. Multi-shots damage is being increased by about 20%. So that's pretty good because multi-shot's pretty weak as far as the actual damage output. Precise shots is being reduced from 100% damage bonus to 75%. So that's why in conjunction with this, it's not a big deal. It is overall going to be slightly more damage, but the main thing is that your arcane shot is going to do more damage without having to get your aim shot off. So again, in PvP, this is really valuable. If you're running 3 stacks of that arcane flurry, if you don't have a situation to set up and have any kind of focus spender right now, you're kind of screwed because arcane shot is not super valuable in just spamming it without having the precise shots buff. This change will make it so that it is a viable option, especially in PvP situations. I'm not sure in PvE it still might be a DPS loss to do that. However, in PvP, I can see running 3 stacks of Arcane Flurry, basically constantly having arcane shots going out, and then using Rapid Fire to regenerate that back. And then if you're able to get a free cast aim shot, then you have some really strong arcane shots coming through with that Arcane Flurry buff. So I'm really excited to kind of test out. I'm planning on trying to download the PTR and play with some of these builds because I think some of the synergies is going to allow us a lot more diversity in our kind of pool of Azerite traits and talents that are going to be viable. Steady shot, basically same thing, the concussive shot extending of the duration. True shot, we already talked about all those changes. Talents, this is a big deal. Now, again, what I mentioned before, this blue post is all the stuff Blizzard's implementing. This is all the data mine changes that people have found on the PTR. All of these that I'm reading down here are subject to change, but the fact that they are being tailored and adjusted in their numbers means that Blizzard is in the middle of kind of working on some stuff with these traits. So that is good news. A lot of times when these kinds of posts come up on the data mined information on the PTR, they generally do go live to some extent, right? These might be reduced down in damage or reduced up in cooldowns or things like that, but this is still a really good basis. Now, these are some real exciting changes for our PvE type of setup we got going here, okay? So careful aim we talked about, straightforward. Explosive shot now detonates on the target you cast it on after 3 seconds, dealing AoE damage within 8 yards. In my opinion, this is how it should have functioned from the very beginning. I'm not sure why they made it this weird skill shot, changing speed projectile that gets stuck on every little pebble in every Mythic Plus. Really frustrating currently how this functions. You literally can't use it because most of the time there's literally like one step and it just disappears or weird. It just functions terribly. So the fact that now they're making it basically you're going to cast this ability at a target within after 3 seconds, that target is going to explode with this like bomb shot and it's going to do AoE damage. Awesome, dude. The damage looks like it's staying the same. It will just be much easier to actually hit and maximize the damage output in this, especially in Mythic Plus situations. Our AoE is going to be so much stronger with this change. Lethal shots, Arcane Shot, and Multi-Shot now have a 20% chance to reduce the cooldown of Rapid Fire by 5 seconds. So again, another change to Rapid Fire and trying to get away from that steady shot spam. I do like this. It will be interesting to see how this how this cooldown reduction works in conjunction with some of the other traits. How often you have rapid fire up. Are you basically going to be focused cap all the time? Or is there basically going to be this playstyle of arcane shot into rapid fire when you're not able to get your aim shots off that's still going to do optimal damage? We'll have to see when all this goes live. But I do like the direction of these changes. It's going to give us a lot more versatility in our options as far as talents and traits go. Volley is getting a buff based on this, a slight buff on the numbers, proccing more often but reducing the damage. I feel like they should increase this proc chance and reduce this by less because Volley is a very weak trait, especially with this changed explosive shot. No one is going to ever run Volley. It's just never going to be worth it. So we'll see. Hopefully they kind of tailor this back up so that it is actually comparable from a DPS standpoint, but we'll have to wait and see. One other PvP change, and again, not sure if this is going to go live, but they're changing Sniper Shot. Rather than it being this flat damage, it's going to do 20% of the maximum health of the target, which is a DPS increase as far as this ability is concerned. It's much more. It usually hits around 8,000 or 9,000, I believe. And for example, like my Hunter has 145,000 health, unbuffed. So what would that be? That'd be a 30,000 damage hit, right? So it's going to hit in the ballpark of aim shot damage-wise. The buff is being reduced, though, to 6 seconds. However, the focus cost is also being reduced. So I do like this change for PvP. I haven't been playing Sniper Shot really too much. I find a lot of the other talents more valuable. But with this damage increase, it might be a worthwhile trait running in PvP. Anyways, guys, I don't want to make this too long of a video, but I did want to go through all these changes and what the implications are and how excited I am for this. I'm really curious to see what kind of Azurite trait combinations we can run with these builds or these changes to the talents and to our abilities in general. So let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know what you guys are going to be trying to run once you see kind of these changes go through. What ideas are these triggering in your guys' heads? I'm really curious to see kind of what we can come up with some cool combinations here. So until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.